Hello and welcome to CollectaThoughts, the show where I collect my thoughts on video games, and today we're going to be talking about Danganronpa 2. This is a game that I've been meaning to play for quite a while, and when I finally decided to play it, well, I'll just say that I started playing it back in the beginning of October, and now we're here at the end of December recording this. And this is important to bring up because I think it brings up the topic of how this game changes from the first one, especially pacing wise. For reference, the game is divided in the same 6 chapters, just like the first game, except now the game is also much longer. For those who don't know, each chapter of a Danganronpa game usually goes through an opening bit where you figure out a new area and also get some character development for then to some kind of mystery to happen, which then leads to, of course, the trials being the main gameplay bit of the game. And with the game being longer but still having the same number of chapters here, what that means is that both of these parts end up being longer, which I found to be neither good or bad, because in a way it allows you to have bigger and more complex settings, while also still having time to develop your characters. And having a longer trial period also allows it to have more twists and turns, which you kind of expect out of Danganronpa. But on the other side of that same coin, that also makes the game feel a lot more overwhelming and slower in terms of pacing. Each one of these chapters can easily go over the 5-hour mark, which at times can really feel like playing its own individual game, which playing this game for a review can be, a bit daunting. I would say for the more casual player or for, someone who doesn't have to play this game within a week, I think you're much better off taking breaks and, playing chapter by chapter rather than trying to beat it all at once. At least that was my experience. Now, in terms of the quality of these chapters, well, I would say that if you like the first Danganronpa game, you'll definitely like this one as well. The absurd and over-the-top nature of it is still very prevalent, and like I said previously, the setting now being a lot bigger does also allow it to be even crazier at points. The first game took place in a school, while this one takes place in an island, which does expand what you can do here quite a lot, as the island slowly opens up to you chapter by chapter, with each new area being usually where the new case will take place. For those who have not played Danganronpa, basically what I mean by case is, well, someone is gonna die. That's kind of the main plot of the Danganronpa games. Groups of students are put together and then are expected to kill each other, with the goal being, in a way, getting away with murder, as after a character gets killed, you and the other characters will have to enter a class trial to try and figure out who did it, and if they do, that person gets punished, which really means killed. And if they do not get it right, then everyone else gets punished, except for the killer. But of course, as a player, your goal isn't really to kill anyone, and it's more to survive, as the murders keep happening and of course you having to figure out who did it. During the main piece of the gameplay I already mentioned, the class trials. The main difference once again being that it's longer, and now the class trials also have more mini-games, which I can't say I'm a huge fan of. I quite enjoy the class trial. I enjoy the twists and all of the trying to figure out who done it, and you being able to put all the clues yourself and try to reach a conclusion, and of course some information being kind of relegated to only being shown during the trial to get that twist effect, or allowing you to finally put all the pieces together. This being, in my opinion, one of the best features about this game, because it really knows how to feed information to you in a way that makes you feel smart and like you're figuring things out without giving it all away at once. And it's just generally satisfying to get the answers right during the trial and unravel it all. That being said, it is not perfect. Once again, I do find the mini games to be a bit annoying, and sometimes the answers to certain questions aren't particularly satisfying. It's hard to give an example without spoiling, but for example, sometimes you have to interject during an argument with your own argument, but sometimes the way the argument is phrased kind of deviates you from the actual meaning of it, making you kind of ignore that argument because you already have such a big list of arguments to pick from, which can make you end up feeling like you're hitting against a wall. It's something that thankfully doesn't happen too often, but it does happen often enough that I think it's important to mention. Also, sometimes it does feel like the argument is kind of being stretched thin just for the sake of playing these mini games, which for me, who isn't a big fan of the mini games, it does stand out. But regardless of any of that, like I said before, the class trials are still very good, and if you like the first game, you'll definitely enjoy this one. Outside of the class trials then, we also have free time. This serves to do a little bit of character development, as you can choose to hang out with any character and hopefully raise their relationship level, which once you max out, you also gain an extra ability to use in the class trials. That being said, it's clear that you cannot complete every character during one playthrough, and some characters are not even able to be finished in a single playthrough because they simply die before you could reach their max relationship level. So even if you knew the whole game and you already know the order in which people get killed, you simply just do not get enough free time to 100% complete it. By the way, free time is what this game calls the time where you can do these activities. But this is not really an issue, it is just an extra you can do during the game, and even the abilities you gain from it are not particularly something you're dying to, especially since the difficulty of the trials is not that hard, and also you can just change it before the start of each trial. That being said, you can complete them without replaying the game in free island mode. Without spoiling, this is a mode you can enter through the main menu, and it basically plays out the story of the game, except with one major difference, which is the murders don't start. And so you can focus on, just raising the relationship level with your characters. And there's also a whole crafting mini game thingy that you have to play, which I'll be honest, I would have just rather have the relationship stuff and not this extra mini game, but I guess it's nice that they went through the trouble. Regardless, the thing I want to do to finish this bit about the gameplay and story off, because I don't want to spoil too much, is that if you like Danganronpa, you'll enjoy this. It is longer and you might feel that, but you also might not. That was my experience and it might not be yours. But in terms of quality, it is very much up there with the other Danganronpa game, and even being better in some ways, I think. Especially towards the end, I do think the game does kind of hit a bit of a lull before the halfway point, because it can feel like you're just kind of going through more trials like you were in the first game. But it does really kick off as the mysteries of this new setting start getting explored. This is something I would say that, a new player is not gonna notice because all of this is new to them. But it's also kind of hard to recommend Danganronpa 2 to new players because of how much of a sequel it is towards the end. I think a new player can very much enjoy this game, but I think that a returning player from Danganronpa 1 is gonna have a much better time. And in that way it's odd, because the first 20 or something hours of this game really just feel like a completely new game or new story, and then when it starts heading towards the end, it becomes very much a sequel to the first game, which once again, nice for returning players, harder to recommend for new players. To make this a bit more understandable, I'll say me as a returning player, I had no idea what the connection to the other game would be until very much it started being hinted at. Because despite having a almost identical premise, the setting and characters of this game are all completely new, except for Monokuma, which is, the very recognizable black and white bear. Now to talk a bit more about the technical side of this game. It does look good, especially for a game that came out on the PSP originally. I guess it helps that it is a visual novel, and a lot of this can be very easily up-resed. That being said, you can definitely notice some lower resolution textures in this game, and while playing at higher resolutions, not only does that problem become more noticeable, but also there are some visual glitches. Nothing that would hinder gameplay or that is even too distracting, because it only really happens during black screens, but it is there and you can notice it. Still, the game looks really nice. There's a really nice art style to it. The new setting allows it to have a lot more variety as well. I remember I got a bit tired of the school setting in the first game, and this one doesn't really suffer from that. During one of the chapters, you even get closed off in a completely new area that only gets used for that chapter. And in that way, once again, it adds to make the cases and the trials a lot more interesting because you just have a lot more liberty to do crazier things. Also, this is neither a positive or a negative, but the game is also a lot brighter looking than the first one. Mostly again because of the setting being a sort of tropical island. So, you know, a lot of yellow. It kind of reminds me of the Persona 4 UI. Now, in terms of soundtrack, the game is really good. This one being again very similar to the first game with very recognizable themes and, you know, just in general catchy sound, which is nice because you will be listening to the songs for quite a while. In terms of what genre it is, I'll be honest, I'm not the best at this, and this game doesn't quite have a sound that I would really put on any genre. I guess it would be some sort of alternative pop, maybe? I'm not sure. Regardless, in my opinion, it sounds nice. Now, one of the final things I want to talk about is the extra content in this game. I already mentioned the free island mode where you get to, you know, do some crafting stuff. To be honest, I didn't really care much for it, but more importantly, you can also raise the relationship level with the other characters, which is a lot more interesting in my opinion. Because speaking of characters, I didn't really go in depth into them because, well, I think that's kind of spoilery because I think a big part of the games is kind of learning about them. And a lot of that learning about them does happen early on. But I will say, again, it is for the most part a completely new cast with new characters and they are quite fun to learn about. I would even maybe argue that they're more interesting than the first game, not so much in their ultimate talents, but more in the way that they interact with each other. Regardless though, getting back to the extra content, once again, we got the free island mode, which I already talked about, and then we also have magical miracle girl Monami. This is the first of the extras that you unlock, and in this one you play as Monami, of course, which is again a character I haven't mentioned yet, but it's basically a female Monokuma, but it has some other stuff going for it as well. And here in this game you play as her in a asymmetric viewpoint where you draw circles to make magic and try and destroy all the enemies that come at you in waves within a closed area. Yeah, I'm not quite sure why they put this game here. Maybe there was just something fun they were working on while they developed the game and they decided to add it in. But, you know, it's an extra, nothing particularly amazing, nothing particularly special, but it's in the game as well, so it is something you can do. And the last extra you get for beating the game, also by the way, the island mode also gets unlocked after beating the game. Regardless, this extra is the Danganronpa If novel. This is basically a book within the game. There is a what if retelling of the first one, which once again, not something that is required, but it is a nice extra because that's what these things are. They're extras, but it's really nice. You get a complete game, a 30+ hour complete game, and then you still get a 4-hour visual novel and some mini games that help you complete the game. I think that's pretty cool. It does feel like a complete experience, which I think is hard to say about a lot of modern games. This is originally a 2002 game, so it's hardly a modern game, but you know what I mean. Regardless though, with that and the fact that I really enjoyed the game throughout its whole journey, especially towards the end, I definitely think it left me with the opposite of a sour taste in my mouth. I was very happy to finish this game, and for those reasons, I am giving Danganronpa 2 Goodbye Despair a 9 out of 10. I'm giving it a 9 mostly because I think that Danganronpa, the original one, is an 8 out of 10 and I do think this one is better, so that's my reasoning. Recommendations wise, if you like the first game, definitely play this one. If you are new to Danganronpa though, it is hard to recommend this one as your first one because I do think one of the reasons I like it so much is because I played the first one and I have that context, especially towards the end of the game. So my recommendation would be play the first one first if you can, but also if for some reason this is the game you have, it just happens sometimes, I get it, then sure, you can experience it without getting the first game as well. And in a way, playing this one and then the first one could be an interesting experience onto itself. If you didn't like the first one though, I definitely don't think you're going to enjoy this. It is very much a sequel in the way that it's the first game but bigger and more ambitious. Now back to the people who haven't played Danganronpa at all. Well, understand that it is a visual novel, but it's not like traditional visual novels. There is actual gameplay and there is a sense of actual interaction with the game, because during the more heavy visual novel parts, you are still just soaking in information because, well, it is at its core an investigation type of game. So if you're the type that maybe doesn't usually like visual novels or maybe is on the fence, I would still recommend giving Danganronpa a try, because while it is very much a visual novel, it's not one in the way that you're basically just reading a book. There is a high level of player engagement here, which I think of course makes it a lot more palatable to people who may not be fans of the genre. If you like visual novels though, especially of the anime variety, you'll definitely like this one. I can almost guarantee it. So give it a chance. If you can, start with 1, but 2 is not a bad place either. Regardless of what your decision is though, I hope that you enjoyed watching, and if so, please consider subscribing, liking, and commenting, and now also disliking, because that doesn't really matter anymore. But regardless of that, those are all the things you can do for free here on YouTube, and regardless of that as well, I hope you're having a good day, and goodbye. And choose hope.